Welcome back to Off Record On Point, the workplace culture podcast with that all-important twist. I'm Julia Linehan, CEO and founder of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. We'll be touching on some under-discussed and sensitive topics today, so please do check out the episode description for a list of useful resources while you're listening. For today's episode, we're joined by the incredible Sumran Kaul, client lead at Brand Metrics. Here's a look in at what's coming up.
That could be their money, it could be their time, it could be their emotional support.
Tell that to the people at the top who don't care about other factors, but care about their business. Well, it's good for business.
Yeah. So true.
This is such a tangent right now. Today, we're going to be covering an all-important topic: workplace equality, diversity, and inclusion. We all know this is an important one, but what is the lowdown, Julia?
So it's really strange that we decided to call this whole session the equality emergency. And that, for some people, that might seem like a little bit over dramatic. And we are, if nothing, dramatic, aren't we, Kasey?
Oh, yeah.
But there's good and there's bad points, okay, in what's gone on within equality within the workplace. So the good news is, Pat, there's a stat that thinks 76% of employees value diversity in the workplace. Big positive. But then you move down to some negatives. Only 18% of women can say they've considered starting a business versus 29% of men. And only 30% of business leaders are women, for example. More worryingly, stats like 1 in 10 LGBTQ plus people have actually left a job due to an unwelcoming environment. And it's also things like 1 in 3 people have experienced prejudice in the workplace. So there's good and there's bad still. And it's really the bad that we're trying to dissect in this session. And I think it's getting under the hood from people who've experienced it, but also from somebody, Sumran, who is actually there driving real change. So I couldn't be happier to have you, Sumran, join us this discussion. So good to have you here.
Welcome, Sumran. Hello.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks for having me.
I want you to introduce yourself, Sumran, and I want you to share a little bit about yourself, your role in Brand Metrics, but also your involvement in Media for All.
My name's Sum. Basically, nearly 20 years in media industry, across research, strategy, insight, those sorts of roles. Mainly worked at big companies. So I started early on PwC, then I moved to ITV, on to Ofcom, then News UK, the publisher. And then more recently in 2020 during lockdown, I joined the lovely Brand Metrics. So Brand Metrics, completely different, small startup, small but fast growing startup, which is basically, if people don't know, a software solution for helping measure like effectiveness of digital advertising. And then in terms of MEFA, so firstly, shall I give a brief intro on MEFA in case people don't really know?
Yeah, do.
Please do.
So MEFA stands for Media for All, founded in 2017 by Naren Patel, who a lot of people know is kind of a veteran of the outdoor media world. And I might be paraphrasing the story, but essentially it was, he's at a dinner with other senior industry leaders, and with the exception of one other person, Karen Blackett, it's kind of a room full of white people. And then that kind of, I guess, sowed a seed in the head of, oh, this is odd. I've never really noticed this. And then this was around the time of Advertising Association figures had come out through studies like All In Census, which was kind of underlining the lack of representation of different groups, minority groups and other groups at senior levels, well, across the industry as a whole, but especially in senior levels. And so that triggered I feel like I should do something. The industry has been quite good to me. He speaks to some of his peers across the industry as well. And just that basically kick-started, we should do something. And in the beginning, it was like, where do we start? And they started off with basically doing mentoring. How can we help other people from minority backgrounds thrive, do a bit better in the industry, move up to the higher ranks? So that's 2017. Fast forward to 2023. It's now 870 members.
Wow.
Exploded. And then, people from all sorts of levels, all companies, just a huge community of basically people from Black, Asian, minority, ethnic minority backgrounds.
I didn't realise it had actually got to such a large extent. That's really encouraging.
In terms of that number we talk about today, everyone's got their day jobs with the exception of Nikki, who's kind of the MEFA employee. But there's coaching, mentoring, jobs boards, research, which is kind of how I got involved. So the way I got involved more and more was there was a survey conducted amongst the members called MEFA. Well, we ended up branding it MEFA Measures. And that was my kind of in. So I helped out on that more and more, and then just increasingly got a bit more active.
That's great.
I've got a question for you, and I hope this isn't putting you on the spot. You mentioned just your earlier career in the big boys with PwC and news, especially going back 20 years ago when you started out. It was a very different picture at those particular companies. If I'm being honest, I know the reputation wasn't great. Has there been any, is it because of that experience that you've really wanted to lean in, or did you have a good experience and or have you seen it change, but it needs to go further? Tell me more.
What I felt at the time was it was fine. I didn't feel there was any issues. When I look back today, I'm probably more aware, oh no, there were issues. I'll give an example, right? So it's, there'll be loads of people in this scenario, but especially if you have parents who have come into the country from abroad or whatever, you come in with a mentality, if you're coming into a different space, in order to succeed and do well in society, you basically have to, play the game. Yeah. You have to understand who holds the power here. And in order to do well, keep your head down, do a good job, and you'll rise up that way. And so probably what ends up happening is I did anyway, unconsciously suppress some parts of me and kind of show other parts, which to an extent everybody does. No one goes into the workspace as them full selves, but it's probably just, you probably did that more than other people. And to be honest, I was really lucky. So I started my career at PwC. The backstory to that was my dad was a chartered accountant. I'm doing I have to do work experience during school, and I get work experience at PwC, which is like ridiculous. So I've done basically nothing to deserve an entry point into like a massive company other than like my dad's my dad. So like I've got my own massive like privileges in that way. But to your point, Julia, interesting story. I'm going off in tangents here, but it gives a good capture of how things have changed.
Yeah.
Years and years ago, my dad, early 80s or something, he's an auditor. He walks in your company and the senior members of this company are like, we're not being audited by him. He's an Indian.
Oh my God.
Right? Which today is outrageous.
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
Was this 20 years ago?
This would be, no, sorry. So this is not true. This is like 40 odd years ago.
Oh my God.
To us, that's outrageous. To him back then,
it was just accepted.
Yeah, that's how it is. And so he'd hit a ceiling in his world. And so it's like, well, the natural place for me now to go is to start off my own thing. But fast forward 20, 30 years later, his son gets a job in PwC, and at the end of that gets offered a job, right? And so that there for you is an example of, on the one hand, how shit things are, and then the other hand,
how far we've come,
which is amazing.
It just takes ages.
Once you were in there, was there any barriers or any experiences in particular that you felt like drove you to MEFA, or was there anything that made you first want to get involved and start supporting them?
So, story of MEFA was 2020, lockdown, George Floyd stuff happens. Obviously, loads of industry topic discussion, loads and loads. And I think I saw a webinar promoted somewhere about the topic. And the thing that stood out to me was there was 4 or 5 people on this panel, and they're all like black or brown. And it's one of these things where you don't realize until you see it. I'm like, oh no, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And so that obviously naturally creates what is this group? And then you find out more, and then you go into the group and you're like, oh, you're like me, and oh, that was like my experience. And and then that starts to open your mind up to, oh, have I been like kind of in denial of certain things about how I feel for ages without actually knowing it?
You always have to see examples in front of you. You have to see that people in whatever guys are like yourself. And I think that's what's been so powerful about the big change in making things have that layer of equality in there. It's interesting you said about your dad, and we really wanted to know if you had also experienced anything bad in the workplace that had led you to really wanting to lean in and go, some change needs to happen.
I've had good people around me generally.
As you should. Good.
But years ago, I was going for a job interview at News UK, which I ended up joining, had many happy years there. The headhunter says to me before, this is a second or third stage interview, you're meeting this lady, she's a senior director. Just to give you a heads up, she's very hard to read, bit prickly, just be warned. So I'm in the interview now, we're having a conversation. She's just staring out the window, and it's a white lady. This is relevant for this bit. She's just not paying attention.
Scary.
And then she abruptly stops me. Where are you from? I was like, what? London. No. Where are your parents from? And I'm like, from India. And then she basically said, I'll tell you why. I'm an executive coach and I deal with lots of different people. One of my clients, or one or two of them, they're Indian. And my observation of people from your culture is you're not very good at handling authority.
What?
And I was a little bit like, huh. So her question then was, look, you've got this far, you can clearly do the job, but I have to understand if you can handle this place culturally. Do you have the resilience? You need to have a certain personality. So at the time, I guess I was a little bit, I saw it as a challenge.
Yeah, that's totally caught off guard.
I gave her a response, which was, examples of that's not true and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
In an instant, she just switched. And suddenly was a huge fan. I really like you. She basically told me in the moment, I'm going to take you on. And then she was super complimentary. And obviously I went on to then get the job.
You just had to disarm her and answer uncomfortable, inappropriate questions was all, I guess.
So here's the thing, right? So you go for a job interview. So to this day, I'm a little bit like, I don't know if that was a strategy or if it was, and it's probably a bit of both. I don't know if it was a strategy to really test me, but it also probably is you hold those views.
But I don't think you get away with that strategy in 2023.
Yeah.
That would never have been a question of other people that could have been coming in for the interview, depending on the color of their skin or their background. So it's more like the judgment factor that pushes it over the edge.
So here's the thing though, right? I suppose with my researcher hat on and just an understanding of human behavior, there's a logic to her thinking, and everyone carries an inherent bias, whether they're aware of it or not.
Yeah.
So it's this thing of she's bundled me in a group, but then to me as an individual, she was really nice.
It's strange, isn't it?
Wild.
Yeah, I don't know how I look back on it.
What initiatives are you, say this is from MEFA, what initiatives are you looking at in 2023, going into 2024? And are there still things and initiatives and training and guidance that you really think need to happen to change? And it is bias. That's not unconscious bias, that's bias. But there is things that obviously still need to happen. What's the plan? What are the big initiatives that are going to shift the dial?
So MEFA, in partnership with Campaign magazine, are going to be are launching Diversity and Inclusion Awards for November, free to enter. So I think there's 6 categories, and the idea is basically how do we champion and promote the great work, great people, kind of doing great stuff in this space. So that's kind of, a flagship event, and hopefully will represent a kind of symbolic turning point in the industry. Because obviously the other thing is it's a business world, so awards are great. They're great for profile, reputation, talent attraction, ego, and so on and so on. So that's one thing. There's coaching for people of colour. There's mentoring. I think there was something like 200 to 300 MEFA members got matched up with a mentor within the community.
Wow.
The most recent Advertising Association numbers, amongst other things, talked about a high proportion of people from these backgrounds that are looking to leave the industry. So we might come on to this later, kind of about talent retention. Really, 1 in 5, Asians, 1 in 3 Black people, ridiculously high numbers. So digging into those numbers a bit more, there's various work streams working with the Advertising Association to try and dig deeper and try and explore the experiences of certain people. So at least from a MEFA point of view, there's 3 groups we identified as having particularly bad experiences: Black women, Muslim women, Sikh women. So there's a trend of intersectionality. If you're a woman, your experiences are much worse than a man. If you're Black or brown, it's worse. If you're, the usual. If you're working class, if you're gay, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of kind of initiatives trying to look into that. Firstly, to give people space to kind of connect with people, to vent, to know you're not alone. But then also, I guess, how do we take learnings back, feed it back to the industry?
You briefly touched on the survey that you were driving on behalf of MEFA. Me and Camelia from our team were at the AOP Crunch event when we heard your presentation and breaking down all of the different takeaways and key points that came out of that survey. Overall, based on that survey, what would you say the current state of DE&I is at the moment? If you could give it a letter grade, what would it be?
D.
Oh.
Oof.
I'll give context.
Yeah, do.
A to C is a pass, isn't it?
Yeah, D's a fail.
So to say C or B or whatever would be pass, which would be to say you're doing like it's adequate, but it's not really.
Too generous.
But the context here is, I would say, a few years ago it would be a
U.
Is it U? Is U unclassified?
Yeah, U is it goes U and then N.
So U's like we're not even going to mark you.
You guys have both lost me with U's and N's on school grades. I'm sorry.
It's like, so I would say D, which is, but the context there is progress. It's better than where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, it's got a bit better, but it's still shit, and there's a long way to go.
I think it's that. It's then we've got to do leveling up. So all the initiatives you're mentioning, you just want a level playing field. You want that up, and you want prejudice out. Now, a lot of times, I think we've reduced prejudice. It's not so overt. It's possibly there, but it's not so overt like the experience you mentioned in that interview or your dad. But I think there's that big push of just saying it should just be a level playing field. I want to take out, from my side, if I look at the digital voice, we're very, very blessed that we have a very diverse team. It's very diverse.
Yeah.
It happens organically. But what it did is I took out all prejudice and all bias, and I went for the right people. And I took out any other layers. There's nothing else I'm interested in. I'm interested in, can they do the work? Can they do it with a smiling face? Can they bring joy and energy? And can they bring all that magic that we need? And that to me is the most important. And the fact was, I just opened the doors. And I've also shut the door on prejudice and opened the doors on who could come in. It could be from any country, anywhere in the world, because we're remote. So it really did level up. And then you layer on top that confidence. And actually, the more it becomes you build on it, because the more people that are there of lots of diverse, I've got to shout out that it's so amazing. You have different voices, different perspectives. If everybody at the Digital Voice was a nearly 50-year-old white woman from a big middle class background, there'd be no diverse thought. It would, and that's not what we want. We want to bring all those different voices. I only have my perspective, and I think that's so important. So I think that's, for me, is the most important thing of the leveling up, and I'm proud that you're doing it and so involved in it. And I think that progress is coming. Is there anything you can? Sorry, that was my long monologue, but I just felt I really needed to get it out.
That mentality that you have is, anyway, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's inherent to you. Those are your values.
Yeah.
Because we all know it starts from the top, right? Everybody knows it. So do you believe, or have you seen actually in the industry, people that historically had this attitude, which is they're biased or they're prejudiced, or I prefer to stick with people who I get and are like me. Do you think they can become like a Julia? Without external forces, because they have to for optics? Do you think inherently people can change?
I think they can change, and I'll tell you why. Having a diverse workforce is better for revenue.
Yeah.
It will make you more money. Tell that to the people at the top who don't care about other factors, but care about their business. Well, it's good for business.
Yeah. So true.
There's an individual DE&I report by builtin.com, and it's coming up with, these are the stats for companies listening out there. Diverse companies enjoy 2.5 times higher cash flow per employee. Diverse management has been shown to increase revenue by 19%, and 3 in 4 job workers actually prefer diverse companies and co-workers. So just know It's satisfaction is also satisfaction equals retention equals money saved equals money gained. Let's hit it where it matters.
Yeah, the bottom line.
That's one thing. And the second thing is, I do get annoyed. I feel that we've had tick box exercise going on, Simran, and I think that that's so wrong, because the wrong people are put in the right people are put in the wrong roles for the wrong reasons, and therefore they don't succeed. And you talked about people leaving the industry. That's a big factor, actually, and that's what we want to try and avoid. It's still got to be the right person. You can't just you can't box tick an I can't get my words out.
This is a really good point when you talk about talent retention. And I remember it being something that came up in the survey results, because that positive change is half the battle. We could potentially change senior leadership's minds when we talk about, their bottom line and sales that could be coming in. But how can we as an industry retain diverse talent once they've been brought in? And where does our industry go wrong when those people, like Julia said, they're put in the wrong role or at the wrong time? What advice would you give to anyone that is bringing in diverse talent but then wants to actually nurture them, foster them, and keep them in the business?
There's been a lot more recruitment focus on people from different backgrounds. Tends to be at a junior level, but we start somewhere. Then in terms of some of the approaches people have used, inclusive JD, job descriptions, blind screening, referral schemes, all sorts of things, partnering with specialist organizations. So there has been effort. And then what happens is people come in and then a huge amount of them leave. So the problem is there's focus on people bringing people in, and then when they're in, there's not enough support when they're in the business.
That's like the box ticking that Julia's talking about, it feels like.
The most recent MEFA survey, we did ask people about, have you thought about leaving, or have you left the company in the last 12 months? And nearly half said yes.
Wow.
The main reason was, and this is the bread and butter stuff, I'll move for higher pay. And so that is what it is. The second highest was, I didn't feel I belonged, something like 43%, which is like a very abstract feeling-based term, but at 43%. And then 1 in 4 said work-life balance, and another 1 in 4 said something like just for a different industry.
Right.
To go back on the point about feeling of belonging, when you drill into that more, what you're finding is that a difficulty to feeling that they can be themselves, to fully integrate, a lack of support in adjusting and adapting to the new environments they're in, whether that's skill-based or just navigating how that company works, like culturally and so on.
So I guess it's sort of spinning whatever the findings were of why people leave. But so we know why they leave, but how do we make them stay then? Is it that education piece where if everyone from the bottom up is educated and has a bit more awareness, does that decrease that feeling of not belonging? Or
I mean, there's a whole range of things. So I think the first thing I would say, I'm thinking specifically about younger talent here, because that's where there's a major issue.
Yeah.
Number one is manage your expectations. Like, I think one thing is be clear before people are joining what the job is, the expectations, right, and what their journey will probably look like.
Right.
Having paths to progression is a big thing. And I think one thing that comes through a lot is people obviously want higher pay, but really you want to work in an environment where you feel you're going to learn.
Yeah.
You're going to grow. You're going to feel supported as a person. Your individual circumstances are going to be understood. You're going to be doing work that is appreciated. Like, I think for me, these are quite basic things. It's just understanding, what would you want if you're going into a space? You want to feel valued. You want to feel respected. You want to feel understood.
Not rocket science then.
No, and it doesn't have to be kind of a linear up a hierarchical like ladder. It can be other ways. So this is a great example. This now with Biometrics, I'm doing a podcast about a completely unrelated topic, really, to our day to day. I haven't spoke to anyone I'm going to be doing this. That I don't even know if they know.
This will be a good surprise. Hello, Anders. Hello, Sean.
I don't even feel the need to tell them.
Because they'll support you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's fundamentally just they're just respectful. Watch how like the next week they're going to, you shouldn't have done that.
This one so much. I'll be like, he got my full approval to do that.
Yeah. So I suppose, sorry, the tangent is I'm trying to think what it is in reality. It is creating an environment where you feel that I'm going to be respected and trusted and supported. And in return, I'm going to put the work rate in for you, and I'm going to help the business, and I want the place to prosper, and I'm part of the unit.
Part of the problem is if you only do it as a token, then you're not creating a community and you're not creating more people who see people like themselves or who have the same values. We all there. So that's another factor, is don't just do it as a one-off, as a token, make it count.
I mean, it's actually counterproductive.
So counterproductive because it makes them feel isolated within our community. It's ridiculous.
And because there's already a lack of trust anyway. Because the thing is, right?
Yeah.
These issues have been around way before George Floyd. Like they're all there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Like, and everyone knew it. And the way certain companies or people operated was always there. So if you are going to now say, yeah, we recognize things need to be better, we really want to improve, the groups are going to be suspicious. People are going to be suspicious and going to be watching closely. And yeah.
It's very true, Sumran. Thank you. I want to pivot slightly because I want to make sure that we get this question in. As we're heading into October, it's Black History Month. There's two sides of this coin that I want to get your opinion on, Sumran. Obviously, there are some companies that they can come across insincere in whatever their campaign is for Black History Month. And there are some companies that are terrified to come across as insincere, that they take no action and are almost afraid to acknowledge it. What advice would you give to either of them?
The first thing I would say is, why are you doing it? Like, are you doing it because you internally feel we want people to feel like they belong, or that this is important to celebrate different groups, an acknowledgement that actually these are important? So I'd say the why, assuming your why is good and it's not for optics.
Yeah, good intentions, hopefully.
Then I would say speak to your people, like listen to the people in your organization. Probably, in the example of Black History Month, speak to them to just find out how they're feeling, what would mean something to them, conscious of like not putting the burden on them, but as in speaking to them and understanding how they feel about it, what would mean something to them. Partnering with expert organizations. Like if you bothered to put the effort in, there are loads of organizations that would
guide you.
This is their bread and butter. Die to do it, to partner up with, especially if you're a big organization, would kill to work with a big organization.
I love that.
If you do want to do something, but you're scared of fucking it up, just say that.
That's great advice.
I personally think most people, if you're honest, will appreciate, okay, I can respect that. And ultimately, like, will help out to an extent. But just start small. It doesn't matter where you are on your journey. Start somewhere, start small, and just have a commitment to do it in the long run. It's not going to go away.
Love it.
We're going to make sure we put a link into the Digital Voices Black History Month blog, which producer Ren has written, and which was done with complete contribution from Akini, Faith, and Camellia. And the reason I'm calling it out is because it had heart. It was authentic. It was real. It was from the people that have lived and breathed and understand cultural nuances and can give a lived experience. And so please read our blog that's going to be posted, and we'll make sure it's with this link, because if ever I was going to say, it was when I read it, it was just beautiful to read, and it had that one thing, which is heart.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it with heart and mean something. So I think this is it's really interesting, because I think it's about, we wanted to try and encourage companies to genuinely cultivate inclusive culture, and they need to focus on a few things to genuinely move the dial. What are those things? Is it the education, the mentorship? Is it the well-being? Is it the action? Is it the relevance of representatives within their organization being their voice? What is it?
It starts from the top. The leadership team have to be actively involved.
Yeah.
That could be their money, it could be their time, it could be their emotional support.
Yeah, in any capacity.
And then in terms of, to your point you made earlier, Julia, some individuals at a leadership level don't care, they won't care. So then it becomes about how do you frame the necessity or the importance of this in a language that they understand. So it's good for retention, or it'll help us attract new audiences.
Or it drives revenue.
Yeah, the things that they'll actually care about.
Before we go into our quickfire round, one more question for you. Thinking ahead, thinking about what's going to be coming up in 2024, what progress would you love to see? Is it retention? Is it more employee networks? Is it senior leadership championing more? What do you think?
More of this discussion.
Yeah.
More industry-wide initiatives. I mean, obvious things, more investment, more transparency in and kind of accountability and public declarations of these are our goals, this is what we're going to do. This is what I would like to see. Right. If you're interested in this area, it's generally the converted speaking to the converted, right? I would like to see more people who not been involved in the dialogue getting brought in. But this is the key bit. We have to create a space where they feel they can be honest and open about their reservations. Because I feel like we've created an atmosphere where people don't say anything. They've got these privately held views, but they're not stupid enough really to come out and say them. But the problem is that they still have those views.
Yeah.
And they still drive their behavior and they still drive their decision making. It's just we've created a space where they can't speak about it.
Having that uncomfortable conversation.
It's a bit like in the world of, for women, there'll be groups of women speaking about how they're disadvantaged. At some point, you're going to have to include men if you really want it to change.
I'll tell you what we did Bloom did that worked so well as, for example, on that point, instead of women talking to women, it was bringing in Bloom Exchange, where there were the male voices, actually male mentors.
Yeah, I got involved. It was amazing for me.
Oh, great.
You want to learn from other people. You want to learn from that experience. And I feel, again, very lucky that within the Digital Voice, it's actually the team around me that have allowed me to understand and ask those questions. I still feel, and you're absolutely right, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about getting it wrong because I can't possibly understand the cultural nuances, or I don't want to get it wrong in any aspect of it, because of course from my side I haven't lived it and I don't know, and I don't want to fuck up and say the wrong thing and it, because it has massive implications very quickly.
But do you not feel like if someone has a sincerity in where they're coming from, you can feel it?
Definitely. That makes all the difference, doesn't it?
And just be open to asking. I think it's not just feeling it. I've learned a lot from just asking what's okay, what's the right thing. What do you feel, and how do you feel when something isn't said in a way that you like, that you want?
Yeah, correct me.
I'm going into nervous mode because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm going to say, and hopefully it won't be the wrong thing. But Ren, our producer, our podcast producer, is listening. It's the first experience I've had of working with somebody who's requested they them, and the number of times I still get it wrong. And obviously we went back to Ren and said, when we get it wrong, is it okay? And Ren said yes, as long as you rectify it and make those changes. But it's equally about them providing a bit more. If they're the only they them, it's could we all put our pronouns, which is something, by the way, Ren, I think we should do. So I think just things like that, little steps. But it's a little bit. Having said that, it's a bit of a learning curve for me, I'll be honest, because I'm like, I don't know why I needed to put she her on my pronoun, because I'm Julia, I'm a woman. And that's it. But I understand it's not about me. It's about making them feel inclusive, that we're all behind it and not sticking out.
That's a great conversation to have.
Hopefully I didn't. Yeah, hopefully I got it right. Ren's nodding, giving me a heart sign. I get it right.
But I respect that. Look what it means to Ren there. I don't know if I'm making this saying up, but everyone wants change until they have to change themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so true. That's so true. I'm going to do you so true.
So true.
I'm going to ask one final question before I hit you with the quick fire round, which, by the way, to our listeners, Sumran's given me carte blanche to add in a few cheeky curveballs, so I'm going to do that. But we got to ask the big one. What progress do you want to see in 2024? We started on a D. We're on a D. We're failing.
Yikes.
We've done a bit better than the U. Where's the letter at the end of 2024, and what's the progress needed?
I think a realistic but stretchable goal. C+.
Okay.
More of the same, but an acceleration.
If I walked into a crazy, hard, near impossible test and walked out with a C+, I don't know about you guys, but I'd feel like, that's all right. We're going to keep getting better. That's
keep getting
okay.
better.
So that feels very optimistic. Love that.
Perfect. Sumran, we are ready. Decided that the theme today would be 5 of 5. So 5 for 5. It's quick fire. Say the first thing that comes into your head. Here we go.
Oh, brace yourself.
Whew. All right.
Sumran, call out companies that you rate as great at DE&I. What are the A's?
I can't think of a single company doing everything brilliant. There might be some out there, but I'll pick out a few that I love how this is like super quick fire, isn't it? Two that I'm thinking of though, just because they've come in my head recently. One is Immediate Media, because their leadership team are backing what they're trying to do. And another one, where I mentioned them earlier, is News UK. Specifically, there's an apprenticeship scheme which is going out and giving opportunities to, predictable groups like working class, more women, people from more diverse backgrounds. But they're doing it at scale, kind of 40 placements, 50 placements. They're bringing them in, they're training them, they're integrating into the business. So that's a good example of a company who is shit on a lot of fronts, but is starting somewhere, is backing it. And so they're probably two examples. There'll be loads of others, I'm sure.
I love that. I call those perfect calling out. So here you go. Curveball, round the other way. Who's getting it wrong?
Oh.
Loads. Probably everyone, because it's a societal issue. But one thing I'll say from the MEFA measures part work we've done in the past, we talked about tokenism. There was a sense that creative agencies and consultancies are basically quite often playing the optics game. These are massive generalizations, obviously, but
they came from somewhere.
Yeah, quick fire. That's what came in my head anyway. But I think anyone that's doing it for optics and there's not sincerity.
Shame on you. Yeah.
You are now a superhero. Sumran, what's your superhero superpower?
This can sound so wanky, but I want to be able to understand the driving force of every individual I speak to.
Ooh.
Understand the driving force.
I'm ready for like lightning or flying or Thor's hammer.
Nah.
And then some just comes out with that right in the feels. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, what are yours?
Right, I'm really nosy, so I want to be a fly on a wall, at every wall, and I want to be able to go in and have a house tour, because we do cribs on the Digital Voice, and I've realised I'm really, really nosy, so I want to be able to look inside anyone's house at any time.
You've just realised that you're nosy.
Oh, fine, I've known for a long time.
Julia, maybe ours is the same. I'm just coming from the inside. You're watching from the outside.
True.
So true. Kasey, what's your superpower? I think it's Florida sunshine, by the way.
I was literally just going to say, if I could be like a star or a sun, or like just have like a bright white light that makes people feel good, that would be a really good superpower.
That's why I love working with Kasey. It's like she lights up a room and life in every way. And that's not me just saying it. Right. I'm going back to a serious question because I'm flipping between them. I want you to describe the 3 top must-dos companies can put in place to have a positive DE&I experience.
Investment from leadership. I don't mean like in the most holistic sense. I would say integrate DE&I into your business commercial strategy goals. So don't have it as a standalone.
Love it.
And feedback.
Yeah, engaging with your peers.
Perfect. You've nailed it. Those are those. Right, curveball. Call it out. Cull companies that do what?
Insincere actions.
Okay.
Or I mean, the other one is tolerate shit treatment of people.
I actually thought you might call that one out, because it's far worse when people stand by the bylines, letting things slide, letting things go, and not calling out. So either one of those, we'll just see. It's your quick fire round, but it suddenly becomes ours very, very quickly. We like to stick our oar in. If you could do anything, what would you be? If you could do anything, and your new role is
something to do with football, development of young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and get really well paid for it.
Shout out to Badu, who do use sports and are widely supported in East London, and they do a lot of great stuff out there.
What are they called?
Badu, Badu, Badu Sports.
And by the way, they are not sponsored by Kasey Long.
They're not, but I know them, and they're fabulous. They do good stuff.
I've just thought of another random question I'm going to ask you.
Go on.
You're saying, well, I'm not a woman, so I've never walked a day in a woman's shoes. If you could be a woman and you could put on a pair of size 4, my feet, what would you think it would feel like?
Oh, good question. I think it would feel...
That is a good question.
I think I'd have a much deeper sense of vulnerability in all spaces I walk into.
That checks out.
What about the other way, if you could be men?
I really want to do mansplaining. I seriously, I just, you know, that way they sit, I just think, and actually, go
The
on.
man spreading.
Yeah.
Where it's just like you're on the tube and you got three seats taken up.
For anyone who's listening and not watching, I'm actually sat and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. Do you feel powerful?
Yeah.
Kasey, I want to know you. What about you?
I don't know. I don't think I would know what to do with all the testosterone. Like, I think I would want to go and like work out or do something.
Beat people up.
Yeah, like I feel like I would just go the total opposite to what I am as a girl, which is compassionate and soft generally, and I would go the full opposite and like rage and just be ready to fight someone.
We've gone off at such a tangent there. This is perfect.
This is such a tangent right
that was
now.
your 5 for 5. Thank you so much for that, Sumran.
Yeah.
I'm going to try, and if I can, because there's been so much in this content, to put some nuggets of takeaways or things to just look out for or try and be. One is authentic, honesty, creating as well a really positive portrayal within your company of showing what works and why it works, and actually being able to display that you mean what you say. Investment from leadership in both the time and the money to be spent into DE&I activations, etc. Integrating within your goals. I loved that, Sumran. I think it is making sure it's part of your business, making it accountable, transparent, and most of all, backing industry initiatives like MEFA that are doing huge things to support, and just even the simple steps of aligning and understanding that there are these initiatives out there and giving it its full backing. From my side, those have been massive takeaways, and I'm so grateful for you coming on board today and talking through those.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sumran. That is all for this episode of Off Record On Point. But of course, the conversation on diversity, equality, and inclusion goes much, much further than this podcast. So don't forget to check out our description for some further reading and resources.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sumran.
Edit me well.
Thank you so much, Sumran.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Off Record On Point. Next time, we'll be catching up with the wonderful Susanna Chaplin, CEO and founder of ESB Connect. We're going to be talking about all things scary about AI and also what's to love about it. But until then, I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. Enjoyed the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. Mine's Spotify. And be sure to follow to never miss an episode.
You can, of course, always stay connected with us at www.thedigitalvoice.co.uk and across all our social platforms. Simply look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again next time for another undercover industry deep dive, all off record and always on point.